Hi friends, I made this for. So today is Wednesday the 8th. Um, and I'm lucky enough to have the day off. So I thought I would be lucky enough to share another astrology slash tarot video with you. Um, this one is about some of our nights, specifically the Knight of Swords, which we've been talking about embodiment cards for the signs and seasons, and Libra in the court cards is seen through the lens of the Knight of Swords. So swords relate to um, air, and the knights relate to cardinal energy. So initiation, starting projects, getting things going, or as we're looking at it through Libra, the start of a season. In the world of the East Coast, it is cool in the mornings. It is starting to get really fall-like, just like that. We got into Libra season and here we are. We're doing the change. And one card that really stands out about change is the Knight of Swords. The Knights are all about that push energy, to me at least. It's that movement. It's that, okay, we're making that change. We see what needs to happen. And now it's a matter of pursuing that goal, which to me feels very Mars as far as the movement goes, but especially when we're looking at the Knight of Swords. It's a very intense card. Just a little heads up, when I pull a knight or a court card, I see it as what we are being asked to embody or what we are embodying. I don't read these cards as other people most of the time. So if you read cards differently and that doesn't resonate with you, of course that doesn't serve you. But if you're interested in learning my thoughts and feelings around this card, here you are. You're sitting here in my studio once again and we're doing it. So as I've been doing, and I love, 3 cards that are the same card from 3 different decks. We have the Line Strider Tarot, which is a very modern tarot deck. We have the Morgan Greer Tarot deck, kind of more classic, 1970s, I believe. But the most classic of them all, Smith-Waite. So this is kind of the card we'll start with, and we'll work our way to the more modern cards to see how they interpret this same imagery. So, like I said before, swords are air. We're talking about air. Of course, Libra is an air sign, cardinal air, initiator of fall. And opposite of Libra is Aries. So the full moon coming up this weekend, I believe it's Sunday, is going to be in Aries because they're opposite of each other. But as I've said in past videos, opposite meaning different ways of getting to the same goal. So they balance each other out. They're very, they're complementary. They're not always, adverse in the way that they get their things, but their focuses are the same. So that's something to just keep in mind. So when I'm looking at these cards, and we'll go over this as we're looking at them, it's very Aries energy. So first card to initiate us into what this, I don't mean Aries, I mean it's very Mars energy. Mars is ruled by Aries, that's what I mean by that. Anyway, segue out of the way. This is the Knight of Swords for the Smith-Waite deck, and we can see his sword is up. There's a lot of movement. Even the clouds look like they're moving quickly. So when we're looking at this card through this deck, we see that this is, even the horse, it's like, oh, we're fucking going. There's wind happening. The trees are being blown. There's a huge amount of commotion happening in this card, a huge amount of action, and it's swift. We see this feeling of like, oh shit, this is some real, like he's going into battle. He's changing things up. So one thing about this card that I feel, we talked about Libra and Justice, Libra and the Empress. This is a very, um, a more push area. So this is kind of the fiery aspect to me of Libra, which of course is a compliment to Libra. It's it's that like spark of genius. Some people, and this is something that was brought up in a circle that I've been a part of recently, is this idea that the suit of swords is more about ideas, like the spark of an idea in our minds, because when we look at air, it can be very mental. So we're talking about mental energies. The pentacles are more the physical realm, cups are more emotional. And when we look at swords, we're talking about something a little bit more um, mental headspace. So this is like you have an idea and you're going for it. One way to kind of describe this card is it feels like a shakeup. It feels like you are really on. If you pull this card, it might be like it's time to really go for that project that you've been thinking about. Like, don't fucking think about it anymore. Act, act. It's a very action-oriented card, and the knights are, but the intensity for each knight is different. Swords to me reads, let's fucking get it. And that brings us to the Knight of Swords for Morgan Greer. So we see a different tone and we see a different action, but how it's described is still there. Like how it's described here is still relatable. Oh, look, they're talking to each other. Again, these are not cards that are strictly masculine or feminine. If we're looking at court cards, they're not that. They're more of the energies behind them. So we see a very action-oriented card. So what's interesting about this one specifically is we see the Tower. Honestly, it looks like the Tower from the Tower card, right? And that's a card that's ruled by Mars. So that's kind of why I get this connection to Aries and that duality for Libra in a lot of these Knight of Swords is there's some imagery that just really feels Mars to me. And that's because, like, look at this Tower. It's on fire. If anything were to reflect the Tower card, it's kind of this. It's literally this. So we see less action in our character, but we see this Tower imagery as a reminder of this might be an invitation to shake things up around us. Maybe not particularly to be right, but because what's stagnant needs to change. So this season might be an invitation if you're kind of channeling the Knight of Swords energy in your practice. This season might be an invitation to really shake things up and what's stagnant in your life. Like go, like I said, go for the idea. Go. Oh my God. No, thank you. So my apologies. Maybe it's time to look around you and go, okay, what needs radical change that I can initiate right now? What do I need to be changing up in this season? So, because that's what's happening right here. This is like huge change with this Tower energy. And that's also why I say it's like Mars and Libra, or Libra and Mars, sort of like we are looking at, the suit of swords. So it's very air. But we see this fire kind of like being echoed in the back as far as like, what do we need to burn? What's not of service? And really like throw those things on the fire, because goodbye. Which seems very, it fits Libra season. We're talking about a season of change. We're also talking about, initiation. Like that's a big word for me when I think of cardinal energy. It's initiating us to really say it's time to step. And in this eastern, like United States, eastern, northern United States, we see those changes happen so fast and they're reflected so quickly. Like, oh my God, all of a sudden it's fall. And we're just like having to make those changes. We're taking the AC units out and putting on the heat again. Not yet, but like it's gonna have to happen soon because it's getting cold. Um, like these shifts are really obvious, and that's because we're really getting that cardinal shift. Um, and lastly, I wanted to bring up a very modern Knight of Swords card, which again, we see this one's very interesting for this suit because we don't see, or this deck rather, because in this deck you don't see a lot of constrictive spaces. It's a very flowy deck, but it almost like, again, it looks like it's almost like a planet, It almost looks like Mars. So how are we initiating that power? How are we empowering ourselves? And that red really like calls to that feeling as well. So we have this feeling of like almost going to war for what we want. We're going to war with what is the status quo. Again, like if we look at justice, we're going to war for what feels right for us and what is right for the greater good. So this is what really, like, to me feels Mars about this Libra energy, is it's not just about the ideas, it's about the action. It's about how we make sure to do it. And even like with this horse, there's like all this tension building up, this strength, and like it's time to almost fight, which doesn't feel very Libra all the time. But Libra in action is, like we said, it's justice. We look at the justice card as well. So sometimes we have to fight for justice. We have to fight for change. We have to fight for what's right and around us. So in this time of Libra, if you're trying to connect with different Libra energies, and of course, every sign is so multifaceted, and that's really what tarot brings for us, is like looking at the different facets of these signs. So these all read really similar, right? But ultimately, how they look in a spread, whether we pull them as reversals or whether we're just putting them on our altar to kind of connect with that seasonal energy, that's kind of like just really powerful to see it in all of these manifestations, all these different versions, as like, okay, this is how we can really channel this energy. Because it comes in many different ways from different cards to reflect the facets of these signs and the invitations. Because for me, looking at, the court cards especially, this is an invitation. Who are we embodying or being asked to embody? So if you're looking for a little shakeup in your life right now, definitely time to connect with that Libra energy within the nights, because let's get shit done. Anyway, thanks for coming and talking, or listening, sorry, I'm talking, and just listening to me talk about night energy, because, night's got your back. The full moon is coming, so make sure you have some intention set, that you're really focusing that Aries energy, because again, Aries, it's very action, it's ruled by Mars. So just hone in on that and really like get excited. I feel like this is going to be a really like refreshing and maybe a little bit of a shakeup. Maybe it's time to get uncomfortable, because fuck it. Life's too short to be numb. And that's what the Knight of Swords is here to remind us. So have a lovely day, and I'll see you this weekend.